When Hyrule Warriors was released in 2014 for the Wii U, I quickly lost interest because I generally don't enjoy Dynasty Warrior type of games, where your character fights hundreds of enemies at the same time. For me, it breaks the immersion when most enemies are as strong as wet toilet paper. Especially when it takes place in a world where these enemies are much stronger canonically. The other reason is that the story is non-canon to the main series. I have loved the Legend of Zelda universe for over 25 years, but that doesn't mean I'm interested in playing Link's crossbow training. However, when Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity was announced, it grabbed my attention because it took place in the world of Breath of the Wild, featuring the same character voices and graphical style that I've come to love. After turning my entire life around during the game's release, I finally got time to sit down and experience it. So, what do I think of Age of Calamity and its performance on the Nintendo Switch? What even am I looking at? What is this shit? This is 480p, 10 FPS. It's a bunch of putrid anal shit. It fucks up the ass, shits out the mouth, diarrhea out the dick, shits for the birds. The frame rate in this game is poo-poo. AVG and tribute and jokes aside, here is my review of Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity. Let me take you back to when I was a kid growing up with Disney movies. After watching each movie about 20 times, I often found myself fantasizing what would happen if the villains won in the end. And as time went on, I just wanted it more and more. Same goes for Nintendo games. I many times wished Bowser or Ganon would win, although we kind of got that with the official Zelda timeline, but never mind. Enter Breath of the Wild, a main title Zelda game where the protagonist lost to Ganon 100 years ago and died. We only got flashbacks and memories to show it, but how cool would it be to actually be there and experience it firsthand? That's what got me hyped about Age of Calamity. Finally, we have a Nintendo game where the antagonist wins. Great! I can't wait to bomb some Dodongos and get my ass handed to me by Ganon! So, does Age of Calamity deliver on this? No! An incompetent guardian gets potato aim and lets this diminutive egg shit travel back in time to prevent it all from happening and starts another fucking timeline in the Zelda universe. Disappointed, I was at least happy to return to the world of Breath of the Wild and learn more about these wonderful characters. It was great to finally be with them instead of it all being through flashbacks, memories, and spiritual guidance. It was cool to see a young Impa and Purah. What I like most about this game is its storytelling and character development. Some of these cutscenes are absolutely amazing and are just as good, if not better, than of those in Breath of the Wild. You're just like one of my Japanese animes! One of my favorite moments is when Zelda awakens her true powers. But my favorite part of the story is the relation between Zelda and her father, King Rome. The acting and camera work in these scenes really captured me. Other than that, it's a pretty basic good versus evil story, but it's well made and definitely worth checking out if you liked Breath of the Wild. As I mentioned before, I generally don't enjoy Dynasty Warrior type of games. As soon as the first mission started, I ran around trying to get a feel for it. And coupled with the horrible performance from a technical standpoint, I was very close to just shut off the game and watch the cutscenes on YouTube instead. But I gave it a fair shot and told myself I'm playing it for the story, which was good enough for me to keep going. So I kept playing, learning the mechanics while enjoying the story. I later realized that I'm having fun with the game as well. I find it engaging facing off against tougher enemies where you have to break their weak points in various ways, in order to follow up with a huge attack that also clears the enemies around you. Using special attacks to chain multiple weak point breaks is super satisfying. There are a lot of playable characters which offer different playstyles you can switch between mid-fight. Link can also equip different types of weapons, so there's a lot of room for experimentation. It feels rewarding when gaining levels, equipment, and unlocking new attacks. There is a missed opportunity regarding armor, however. You can equip many different outfits and armor sets, but they have no attributes whatsoever. So playing half naked or fully armored has no effect on gameplay, which is a shame since I really enjoyed that aspect in Breath of the Wild. Age of Calamity initially felt clunky when running around and wall jumping. It's like there's no momentum and Link just kind of fucks about. But after playing the game for almost 20 hours, it still sucks. Overall, it's fun and satisfying. Borrowing many, if not all, assets from Breath of the Wild, the game looks great artistically. There's a lot of color and character in its style, which also offers good variation from stage to stage. Therefore, it's interesting to look at, for the most part. Some areas can look pretty dull with low texture resolution. This being said, however, Age of Calamity bites off more than it can chew by having these grand battles featuring thousands of characters in an open landscape. Throw in the Nintendo Switch hardware and you got yourself a recipe for a quagmire of frames. It doesn't seem to be well optimized either, as parts like these can go down to sub 10 frames per second while dipping to around 480p in resolution. For a late 2020 game, this isn't acceptable. Worst case scenario aside, the game always seems to struggle holding a steady 30 frames per second. I think most people won't notice or care about it. If I played this game back when I was 10 years old, I wouldn't. But ever since I became more proficient in graphics and performance of video games, it's difficult to unsee it. Speaking of things you cannot unsee, it's blatantly obvious when there's a pre-rendered cutscene as opposed to in-game cutscenes. There are visible artifacts from using a low bitrate, and the color range is limited, so blacks or more like dark gray. It's ugly and takes me out of the immersion. Call it nitpicking, but I think it should have been done better, especially for a full-price title. The in-game cutscenes look great though. I wish most, if not all cutscenes were like this. All the menus and loading screens look nice as well, and they do a good job of hiding its atrocious load time by including some voice acting, artwork, and hints. Loading a mission can take up to 1 minute and 20 seconds, and exiting can take around 20 seconds. It's not complete cancer, as it gives you enough time to stretch and hydrate. If you had played this soundtrack to me and said it was for Breath of the Wild 2, I would have believed you. It feels like it belongs in the world, which is impressive since none of the composers worked on Breath of the Wild. Age of Calamity mirrors a lot from it, while still adding something new of its own. It does a fantastic job emulating old songs by giving them new flair. Listen to this example on Guardian Battle and Lost Woods. After playing through both games, I have to say that I enjoyed the soundtrack in Age of Calamity more. This is because Breath of the Wild being an open world game means that 90% of your time, all you're hearing is this. In Age of Calamity, I never got tired of its music. Even repeating tracks such as Overlooking Hyrule changes depending on your progress in the story, and makes the world feel more alive. It's something I wish Breath of the Wild also had, so I can stop hearing that godforsaken piano! The jingles are mostly copied, which is fine since it's so tied to the identity of the world. The sound effects serves its purpose, and it feels impactful when you go all Rambo Commando on 3 fucking guardians at the same time. Triple stasis. Oh my god, this is so amazing! I love it! I was put off prior to my playthrough when I heard Age of Calamity was yet another alternate timeline. The frame rate was worse than Ocarina of Time on a PAL console, it was another Dynasty Warrior type of game, and it didn't help that Nintendo has been acting like a snake in the grass for the past years. In the end, I'm glad it didn't stop me because I had a great time with Age of Calamity. The presentation, world, characters, story, gameplay, and music reaches a level of quality that I've come to expect from a Nintendo game. I'm still disappointed in the performance and lack of optimization, but as for most things, you get used to it, and underneath the swamp of frames lies a pretty good game. Honestly, sometimes the huge lag spikes can enhance the power and impact of what's going on. It's like a guilty pleasure. With all the past negativity surrounding games like Death Stranding, The Last of Us Part 2, and my initial criticism for Age of Calamity, I have learned that gamers are way too quick to judge something based on what the internet says, instead of experiencing it and decide for themselves. There is way too much bandwagoning in the gaming world, and I've been guilty of the same thing. Age of Calamity, with all of its faults and technical issues, is still a fun game.
The game is fun. If it's not fun, why bother?
And that's good enough for me.